Thank you. We're back with the Montgomery County Board of Education, second round of interviews. We will now defer over to Dr. Joseph.
Good evening, board members. We have our third and final candidate with us today, Dr. Harold Wright. Dr. Wright, welcome. Thank you so much for being a part of the second round of interviews.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you, Madam President and distinguished board members, for inviting me back. I'm truly humble.
In terms of our process today, we have allocated 1 hour for this interview. We'll begin with a 5-minute opening statement. Then we will proceed and allow board members to ask a few rounds of questions. And then after about 50 minutes, we'll give you an opportunity, 55 minutes, we'll give you an opportunity for a concluding statement as we go through here. Okay? So without further ado, we'll turn it over to you for the intro.
Okay. Thank you again. I'm extremely excited to be here. Put my glasses on, so you know what that means, right? Focused. So when I was here last week, I talked to you, I asked you to write 3 words down: impact, excellence, collective impact. And so the impact that you've already done since 2017, you've made tremendous progress. But I talked to you and said that the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. And I said to you, we can take that C to a B, and then after 5 years, we're going to be where? At an A level. And so one thing I will say to you, that of all the training, all of my experiences, I became a very strong leader. And what I share with you, my priority is to work with this board. That's my superpower, is working with a team, building teams. You'll see me creating great teamwork at the campus level. And so what I want you to envision, especially throughout the day, is my success triangle. Okay? That means my priority, number one, at the top of that triangle is this board. Okay, I serve at the will of this board. Okay, you will be able to go to sleep at night knowing I'm not going to do anything crazy. Okay, I'm practical. I'm very structured, but you'll know the work that I do. The other end of that triangle, there's community. I have a vast working body of success working with community. That's the work I did at the education agency in the state of Texas. I was the architect for partnership work. On the other side of that triangle, we'll be working with teachers and staff, supporting them. That triangle has to be balanced. I will spend my time with those 3 different groups, because at the center of that triangle are our students. It has to be balanced. It has to be focused. And so you can close your eyes and see me at work in that triangle. I'll be spending 1/3 of the time with all of you, 1/3 of the time engaging community, and the other 1/3 of my time working with the staff here and in the schools. And so the one thing, now I'm very bold in my statements. I'm humble, but this is a great opportunity, and I came here to win. Okay, I want to tell you that. That's in my DNA. That's just part of who I am. If you hadn't noticed, I'm a pretty big guy. I work out, and I'm strong, and I have strong leadership. And so playing football taught me you're in it to win it. But there's sometimes you're going to lose, but you learn from that experience as well, and you try to get better. And so when I look at student achievement and I'm working with adults, they're my team. My other strength is coaching. I coach people up. Okay, I've taken principals who were on their way out and turned them around and made them better to become some of the best principals in a very large school district such as Dallas ISD. The one thing I say to people in my experiences, and then I'll bring this plane in for a landing with my opening statement. I have a unique set of experiences. I worked in a large urban school district in a turnaround process. We took it all the way up. My pride was creating an early childhood school that became a demonstration site. We used circle assessments. Our kids got better, our teachers got better, our administrators got better. But what we did, we brought in other early learners at the level of early learning teachers and trained them. They looked at all of our practices. That was where I started my role as a partnership developer. And so in conclusion, you'll see me focused on good reading and math habits. I mentioned that the first time, across all schools. But in that success triangle, that's what we're going to do. It's that collective impact work. Not only are we going to strengthen the lives of our children, we're going to support their families, because what we have to do is have safe, supportive, and supported schools in every area of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question will begin with Mrs. Claudia Mitchell.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
My interest is in community also. What specific initiatives would you implement to strengthen school community partnerships, particularly with faith-based institutions, local businesses, civic organizations, and how would that help support student success?
The one thing that I learned, and thank you for the question, great question. The one thing that I learned when working with the state and my experience there is that school districts had partnerships, but mostly in name. And so what I did when I studied places like the Harlem Children's Zone, who had great partnerships, and then those schools that were in the Promise Neighborhood Grant Program, they had a metric. And that metric was their measure of how they supported the children in the schools, because it was to cause an impact. The thing that I will do here is take all of these partners. You have a wealth of partners, especially around dual enrollment, your higher ed partnerships. Bring all these partners together in collective action network development. In developing, make sure we have a metric in every MOU, having a common agenda, having a common metric. So when we bring all of these together, great things happen. So let me share just an analogy with you. I know you like my analogies of the elephants fighting and the running in the grass. Here's another one. You remember the Clydesdales that you would see on TV, the horses?
Oh, yes.
They're some of the strongest horses in the world. And so when one pulls weight, it can pull up to 6,000 pounds. When you put two together, some people think it's addition. But when two together, they can actually pull more than twice their weight. They can pull about 14,000 pounds. And so when we pull all of these groups, there's strength in numbers. And so remember that success triangle? This group is that lead Clydesdale. You provide the leadership, the vision, and the high expectations, and the support and resources. And let me say a little thing about high expectations. High expectations without support and resources is insanity. Support without high expectations is chaos. And so when we can bring all of these groups together under this board's leadership, being that lead Clydesdale, so to speak, because you're a very powerful group, then our kids are going to experience more than we expected. And so those are things I'll do. We'll have a common agenda, a common metric. We'll meet frequently to talk about team focus. But then again, we'll celebrate at the end because we're going to be successful, okay? And so as a result of that work, success is at the end. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Ms. Pamela Cloud.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let me flip over. What strategies, according to federal law, would you adhere to and implement to improve academic achievement in Title I school improvement Year 3+ schools? And can you provide an example of a successful school improvement initiative you've led or observed?
Thank you for that question. So one of the things, two things that schools in Title I under that umbrella must do is, one, do that needs assessment. And then there's a parent engagement test that they have to do. And that's a requirement. But the most successful schools receive support from the superintendent and his or her team. And so currently what we've been able to do where I'm at, we created what we called a tiering tool, and it's equity-based. And so that tiering tool, we go through a process. Anytime we give our benchmark assessments or interim assessments, we get that data, and the superintendent and I, we sit and we look through the data school by school, and we look at the data, not only the achievement data based on the outcomes of their interim assessment. We have culture walks, okay? What do those culture walks say? And then our administrators, our executive directors submit to us how things are going in their professional learning communities. That's where teachers plan, okay? Are teachers looking back to reflect on how they provided instruction on the standards for the 6 weeks or week to week? How did they do? Do we need to reteach a certain standard? And then they look ahead, what has to be taught. And everything is aligned. That's the strength of it, the alignment. So we look at how they're planning, and then we look at the discipline incidents. Okay, how many kids experienced out-of-school suspension or in-school suspension? And so we make sure that when we look at that, are they using our MTSS methods for behavior? Are they tiering their students? Because some students do come with great challenges, but we give them the resources to overcome those challenges. Same thing with academics. We have an MTSS model for academics, especially when they experience failure. MTSS for attendance, because attendance, what we want to do is cut down the chronic attendance, the chronic absenteeism. And so we have resources for that. But we look at those things. We look at out-of-school and in-school suspension. We look at the attendance rates. Are the schools achieving their target? We set the target at 96%. Okay? And then also, what we look at holistically, those things that they've done to involve the parents. And so what the superintendent and I do, we tier the schools. We call it stoplighting approach. Okay, in all those areas, let's say for student achievement, if they achieve their marks, their goal, we label it green. Okay, if they don't and they're a little bit off, they go into the yellow. And if it's way off, they're red. And if it's tremendously off, we label it orange. I know orange is not on the stoplight, but that's when we blow it up and we send a lot of resources to help them reset. And so what we do with Title I schools, all our schools are Title I, okay? We monitor, provide support. We're very empathetic because the superintendent and I both worked in Title I schools. We know how challenging it can be. But also, it's our job to give them the support and the resources. You know, we have high expectations, but we give them the help that they definitely need. We actually sit with them in their leadership teams, and they tell us, we own the data, they're responsible, But here's what we need to get over our challenges, and we are giving it to them. And so those are things that you would see me do when working with Title I schools. There's also a goal tree that we'll set because we want them to focus on their power standards. And we want them to name which content area they need to work on most, and so they prioritize their content areas. I know that was a little bit lengthy, but that's a lot of work.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But year 3 in school improvement is critical because 2 years to get out, 2 years to get in, 2 years to get out. And then you start adding those years, and that's what I'm most concerned about, is those added years.
Yes, ma'am. So when I was at the State Education Agency, I worked alongside school improvement. Now, where I'm from, it takes 2 years to get out. We say get out of jail.
Yes.
So,
Oh, no.
no, I mean, that's the joke with educators.
Well,
But
even safe harbor, it's just,
safe harbor, thank you.
that's what I'm ready for, safe harbor.
Okay, so do you mind if I extend maybe 30 seconds? I know I'm a little bit lengthy. So forgive me for saying jail, but it's safe harbor. But the one thing that we want to do is put the school on a path of sustainable success. And so that's how I'll conclude. Best practice.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Dr. Lisa Keith.
Thank you for being here. I know
You're welcome.
we know how far you've traveled, and I know last time you came by car. I don't know if you flew this time or what, but I'm
I
just
flew.
okay. Well, I'm just glad that you care enough to come here, and so thank you for coming back.
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of a deep question, and it's kind of connected. And I may have asked this already, but I was just looking at your thing that you gave us, or information you gave us. And I kind of want to know your perspective. If you're sitting there and you have to make a statement as to this data that you're looking at, for instance, example. Okay, the question that I'm asking. Well, let me give you the situation. And I think I gave it to you already. You're in a given classroom, a given traditional classroom here in Montgomery. And according to your paper, you're going to do classroom observations. The leadership team visits classrooms to identify the level of student learning and instructional capacity of educators within the district. You've given us that. So we both know, I love your analogies with the elephant, and when we were saying envision and close your eyes, I thought of Matthew McConaughey immediately. I did. I was like, this guy is doing my number. And where I'm at here is we both know that when you send team leaders off to classrooms, you're going to get that dog and pony. You're typically going to see a dog and pony show by that teacher. So I'm asking, how many times are you going to observe the classroom? Because in a given classroom, Dr. Wright, like I said last week when you were here, we've got your high-end smart, your low-end, you've got your SPED, you've got your ESL, you've got your discipline, you've got your autistic. And I've got autistic in my own classroom right now, 2 or 3, which, by the way, I'd rather take an autistic all day long, because when they learn something, they learn it and it sticks. You know they're getting it. So when you see and hear from your team, oh, Dr. or Joe Blow is doing a great job, but yet you see the 16% proficiency in math and 36% proficiency in reading. My question goes here. You got this all on your plate. Montgomery Public Schools faces systemic challenges in ensuring students reach proficiency in literacy by 3rd grade. What comprehensive literacy plan would you develop, and how would you ensure that it addresses early intervention, family engagement, and culturally relevant text? I'm more interested, not necessarily in the family engagement, because I think you've really handled that with us, and the relevant text. I'm fine with that. What I want to know is, what do you do when you know that when you've got 16% proficiency, that means you've got 84 that are not? How do we handle that? But teachers saying, "Hey, great job," when they do their visits. Obviously, these aren't adding up. Now, what does Dr. Harold Wright go? What are you going to do?
Thank you. Great question. Great example. What you have to do is really know and understand both quantitative data and qualitative, because you don't want to get a false read, okay? But you want to do a trend analysis. And so really going back to, I will look at how each student group performs. I will look at how the genders perform. We'll do a gap analysis. We'll do a deep dive with a root cause analysis. The data does not lie, okay? You can do a dog and pony when I go in your classroom, but over time, when kids don't achieve on that state test, that tells a big story that dog and pony is not working anymore, okay? And so based on the results that you shared, that represents a systemic problem, okay? What I would like to do is really advance the thinking to this board and say we need to create a program called Montgomery Public Schools Achieve. And so when I started thinking, when I left and I looked at the portrait of a graduate, and I think if you recalled, I mentioned extended thinking, the portrait of a postgraduate, right? And then I was reminded by Board Member Cloud, what about the elementary kids? And so we need a pre-K-16 approach to literacy. And so in my work, in my body of work, I've done this work, and you have it in front of you. The research says that kids are learning the most between 18 months and 3 years. I created programs based on the Harlem Children's Zone. I do the research. But in every school district that I've supported, whether when I was in Dallas, where I am currently, or at the state level, we put in high quality early learning programs, but before that, we started working with the parents. So when I look at your data and I look at your student enrollment in pre-K 3 and 4-year-old programs, it's lower than the kids in kindergarten and in first grade. That tells me a lot of kids are going to somebody's daycare if they're in some kind of program at all. In one example, and I'll go through the other grade levels about literacy, but the thing that we have to do is really help families, parents of the kids' first teachers, develop literacy centers and learn how to teach their kids before they start school, get them school ready. That's one approach, okay? And so that would be the baby college. Remember I mentioned baby college? So it's in my document. But we look at systems of schools connected. And so in PLCs, you have that horizontal planning. And then also we have to have the vertical alignment, the vertical planning. But what happens when you look at the standards, each standard, as you go up a grade level, complement one another. And so as kids move from grade level to grade level, they should be experiencing more complex text, okay? Because that college readiness piece over here, they should be seeing just lots of words on a page, more complex sentences, in $25 words, right, so to speak. And so, but at the early level, what we do, we use our map assessment to see where the kids truly are with reading and comprehension. And so you start with where the kids are. That's exactly what that means. But when I go in classrooms, I can tell you what I look for. I look at teacher moves. Is the teacher giving kids examples of what great looks like? Because we want them to master the learning that day, okay? Then I look at student engagement. Are they engaged at the right levels of thinking according to the verb in that standard? And then I look at the resources in the classroom. Do they actually have the resources to challenge the kids? You can't fake that. There's no horse, dog, pony show that you can fake. If they're not doing those three things, then they're not implementing best practice. I would look for it at every grade level. But remember, true literacy is they need to be able to write what they're reading about, okay? And so they need to do extended short response writing, and then they need to do extended composition response writing, okay? Back in our day, it was called an essay. You had a five-body essay. And so I would take a comprehensive approach, but I'll pull together a literacy team to make sure we have sustainable practice. You see, you have some come and say that we're going to do this, that, and other, but it's about when we put something in place, we expect it to achieve results and be here not for the short term, but for the long term. And so those are things that I would do to build literacy, but it would be a citywide approach as well. You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Dr. Brenda Doremus Coleman.
Thank you. And Dr. Wright, welcome back.
Thank you.
As I look at your synergistic theoretical framework, I'm very impressed, and I'm happy that you are looking at the great schools and the supported and supportive communities that we have here in Montgomery. My question, in that Montgomery has faced leadership turnover, leading to concerns about stability and long-term vision, how would you help build trust with this school board to ensure a sustainable leadership tenure that guarantees and ensures us those great schools and continued support of this local community?
Thank you for the question. But I also heard in there, are you looking for a house? I am talking to a realtor. Yeah, just a plan. Okay.
I'm a relative.
Okay, let's talk.
Conflict of interest. Yes, I know.
So leadership is one of my strengths, okay? And so I actually have people that I was their mentor who were superintendents. They beat me, but there's a reason they got to it before I did. But the one thing that you'll see me doing is making sure that we have a plan for the leaders that we have today, and then succession planning as we have leadership turnover. That's going to happen. That's realistic. But in terms of leadership, I will use those national standards. They're called the PEACE standards. And so with those, not only will I train central office on how to support administrators at the campus level, but we'll focus on those standards so they can have back and forth dialogue. What I recall when I was a new principal, I didn't have that much confidence. And so our goal is to build their confidence by building their competence. And so through their experiences as well, but also having reflective practice. That's the way you grow. You learn from your experiences. And so we will have a leadership development program. I will bring with me, if you look through this document, it's called an Effective Schools Framework. I actually vetted that out. And so really a strong leadership development and planning, that's the first lever. The next one is talent, retention, recruitment and retention. That's the next one, because we want to make sure we identify more teachers and have the best teachers in every class. Every child in the school district deserves to have a great teacher. The other one is making sure that I'm the champion for culture. I don't know if you recall, I asked you the question, if I'm a parent, why would I want to send my kid to your school? What's so great about it? And do you care for my child that I would send them back the next day? Those are things around culture. And I think, I recall hearing, you won't go in one school, you see this, and they're disconnected from the next school. We're going to have universal practices. You'll see PBIS. You'll see restorative practice. And so that's just going to be part of culture, as well as those MTSS practices, multi-tiered systems of support. And then we're going to focus on making sure that Teachers have the resources, the high-quality instructional materials and resources to challenge kids and get results. And then it goes back to looking at classrooms. We'll establish learning walks. We'll go in classrooms and we'll see the progress being made, but I will train the leaders, the current leaders, on the key look-fors and how to give feedback. And so because effective instruction, that's that final lever of the Effective Schools Framework, effective instruction makes the most difference for our children. And so when a child, the research shows that when a child experiences a bad teacher, in 1 year they get 2 years behind. That's not right. And so when I told you at the beginning that I'm a strong leader and I'm equipped for this role, these are from my experiences. I've opened up schools. I can tell you, one of my teachers that I hired a long time ago from Baylor University is sitting in the back, and I'm so proud of her. And she's just a jewel. She made the trip from Auburn to come to this interview. I'm so proud of her.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Ms. Pamela Porches.
Dr. Wright, as we talk about, we've talked about improvement and leaders and that type of thing. One of the things that sometimes we may not have as a district is a standard. And, you know, we're Alabama, we're football. When we think about University of Alabama, we think about a standard for the University of Alabama. They have a standard that they play at. If you were thinking in terms of our district, what strategies would you use to create a culture of continuous improvement that outlasts individual leaders and becomes embedded in the district's identity?
So thank you for that question. Mm-hmm. It's really about brand identity. Mm-hmm. And so where I am, we have a slogan called act like a family, work like a team. And so it's really about putting systems in place. And it's not my systems that I create or come up with. It's really looking at the clearinghouse of best practices. There's a clearinghouse out there. And so I mentioned professional learning communities. There's a way to do them right and give the teachers autonomy. Once you are satisfied that they know what to do, give them the autonomy without being big brother and looking over their shoulder. When you see that they get results, trust that they're able to achieve that great work with kids. The other thing that for a district this size, and in my experience, what I've learned, working with large urban school districts, you have to put in a practice called managed instruction and earned autonomy. And why do I say managed instruction? And so really looking at how we align, and this is something I learned a long time ago when I was working on curriculum instruction and the growth model, and it's under Dr. Fenwick English, who's the master of curriculum alignment. But what you have to think, what we experienced, the reason we had managed curriculum, because we had so much movement. You know, we had kids that lived in his apartments, and they would stay there the 1 month, get the free rent, and then move the second month. And so the managed curriculum, though, we taught a set of standards. This 6 weeks, let's say in math, we're teaching long division, yet they move to another school. They don't miss long division because the school is teaching in about the same place. And so really making sure that we have an aligned curriculum to where our kids don't miss out on learning. And that's the big idea. That's sustainable. And so I know that where I was from and just thinking about Dallas ISD, That's still in place. They've gone through 3 leaders since then. And so they have a managed curriculum, but earned autonomy. Earned autonomy is when schools get results. I was one of those principals, I got results. And they gave me $10,000 to really share with my team, my teachers, for achieving those results, because now we could really identify some learning that we needed as professionals to improve the school. And so it was good. It was a good carrot.
Thank you. All right. So I'm Erica Watkins Smith. I'll be asking you the last question for the first round of questions. What strategies would you implement to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of Montgomery Public Schools' budget process while ensuring transparency and accountability to the taxpayers?
So thank you. That's a great question. And so knowing what I know about building budgets is really thinking about addressing our needs as a school district. And so about 85%, 80 to 85% of a budget is in salaries, right? And then you have those fixed costs. And so what you have to do is think about the revenue side, how much money is coming in, and then the expense side, those expenditures. And so the thing that I know, we have very little control of both. And so what we have to do is really, I look at program evaluation. And so when I look at program evaluation, are those programs that we purchased and we have contracts with, are they achieving the desired results? And so, for instance, we have a credit recovery program. We put kids in there. We want to see X amount of kids, since we're paying for this program, we want to see them achieving credits so they can graduate eventually. And so the one thing, I do monitor the progress, and if kids aren't making progress, I start questioning, why are we spending this large amount of money on this program that's not yielding results? Is there something we can do to improve that? And if I don't see improvement, it goes into program eval. They do a deep dive to look at the number of kids, how much money is being spent, and then they have to make a recommendation to me and the superintendent. This is one that we need to sunset, okay? And we can do something different. And so just because we buy something doesn't mean we keep doing it. But when it comes to budget, it will be, the board will be heavily involved. We will have public hearings so they can talk about the needs and wants. So we're addressing them through our budgeting process. And so it would be inclusive of the community, but it would look at budgeting practices and assigning teachers and staff to each school based on the staffing plan. And so it will look at enrollment. And so we'll have a very comprehensive process for rolling out a budget. This budget, the way what I looked at, you have a very strong budget. You've come a long way in the last 5 years. You have a very healthy fund balance. And so the one thing that I know the school board sets expectations around the percentage range of how much we want to keep in that fund balance. And so you have a very healthy fund balance, so congratulations. What that means that you get a better, when you go purchase something, your credit rating helps you when you're making purchases. And so congratulations to that. We want to keep it that way. But it will be a very inclusive process. I will come to you. I'd work with the chief financial officer. We want to make sure we continue to get a good credit rating, but we would talk about the needs and wants to help our kids achieve. And so at the center of everything, it goes back to that success triangle. Let's say we had to make cuts. The cuts will be external. We're not going to touch those classrooms. And so that's culture. We want to make sure that teachers are able to teach and get the tools and resources that they need. But we also want to make sure that, because teachers aren't teaching the same kids, there is differentiated learning model within those classrooms, that they have the resources to meet the challenges in their classrooms. And so it would be a very comprehensive approach for designing, developing a budget.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Your next question will again come from Ms. Claudia Mitchell.
And we have about 20 minutes.
Okay, well, quickly then. Our stakeholders have consistently expressed the need for a visible, engaged superintendent. How would you maintain a regular, meaningful presence in the schools and communities to understand the truly the lived experiences of our students and families and educators?
Thank you for that question. And so it goes back to that triangle. And it really I look at my calendar to make sure I'm spending enough time with all three groups, but also getting invites to PTAs and speaking to the PTAs, making sure that, and what I would like to do, and I mentioned this the last time, is having a citywide PTA to where they come here and we give them support and leadership design, but also going to them because they have a lot of parents that wouldn't be able to come to our district meetings, but also going to them and speaking, going to the churches. I currently work with 3 chambers of commerce, and so I go to the chamber meetings. And so really extending myself very broadly. But the other thing that I think we have to do, because I'm all about collaboration and working with others, building teams, I have to build some ambassadors to carry our message, okay? And it can't be just me, okay? I know how important it is to see the superintendent and be in the superintendent's presence, but we have a brand that we have to build, and we have a message that needs to be carried consistently. Those are things that I do consistently. And so I build a team of ambassadors, and they go out to every location in the city that invites us. But we're asking to be invited as well. And so you'll see those things, but I will be very visible, approachable, whether it's at ball games, whether it's band contests. I was in the band, by the way. And so I put my shoulder pads down at halftime and I marched with my tuba. And so just having fun. But we'll also do some things at the central office. We'll have fun Fridays, just to really build some team building. I'll expect that at the campus level as well. And so we're going to have a great time, but also just being very approachable. I'm a real person. You know, I tell people, call me Coach. A lot of people call me Coach. But Dr. Wright, if you feel like it. But anyway, thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Our next question will come from Ms. Pamela Cloud.
Just under the wire. Alabama has a new Alabama Teachers Bill of Rights. If you're familiar with it, please tell us how that bill helps improve academic achievement.
I must confess I'm not familiar with it. Can you give me an explanation?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you another question. Please summarize the 3 pathways to graduation requirements for the Alabama high school students and what instructional tools are used to support these pathways.
So in terms of the academic requirements, they have to meet coursework requirements and pass all the required courses. And so they're on a pathway to achieve those coursework. For graduation requirements, and there's testing requirements. And so they have to achieve those. And then I want to say there's and I'm studying Alabama, there's some CTE programs of study requirements that they have to achieve. And so one of the things that I know we have to do, I do this, and I monitor starting in 9th grade, kids on their pathway to make sure that they're making progress on those pathways, they're achieving those assessments, but also achieving those certifications, because we want them to be college, career, we say military ready because in the military that ASVAB does mean something, so we have them take that assessment because they can get a great living wage job through the military. And so those are things that we do. I created a dashboard where I currently am so I can monitor every child. Remember last week I said, when you look at data, it's a number, right? But when that dashboard and I open it up, I can see every child, that child's a name, not a number, and I can see the progress they're making with their courses, with their tests. There's some college level tests, ACT, SAT are also important. And those are college readiness measures that help a child not have to take, once they enter college, not have to take remedial courses. And so they're on their way. We don't want them to waste time or money because college is expensive. But also making sure we give them the resources if they're in the AP courses and they achieve excellence, whether 3, 4, or 5 on that AP exam, we need to celebrate that. And so I have a vast understanding of what kids need to do to not only graduate here, but also that portrait of a graduate, move to college or career. The thing that I like right now about this world and public schools, we have a kid that graduated out of our aviation P-Tech program, Principles of Technology. So they're working with the airline. We're partnered with the airline. This child, upon graduation, accepted a $120,000 job. This is a kid coming out of high school. And so we have those opportunities now. I want to make sure we do the same thing here in Montgomery. You know, I mentioned Montgomery Achieves. Those are some of the things that we will do as a board to make sure those things happen. So it's just not like plain vanilla education. We're the best, and we expect the best, and we're going to help achieve kids to put them on a great trajectory in life.
Graduation doesn't start just at high school.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Dr. Lisa Keith.
Okay, because we're pressed for time and I want to give everybody plenty of time, I'm going to be quick. I'll give you a scenario. Equity and access emerged as core concerns in the leadership profile. How do you define educational equity, and how would you ensure that all district policies, programs, initiatives are centered on equity? And let me give you an example. When you look at our school system, and you take and people are losing jobs, or you know, we to save money we lose jobs, but what happens is we tack on those jobs with existing employees already, and then what you have is these existing employees feeling like, hey, why am I? You know, I was getting paid for doing this. Now you've given me all this extra stuff. You know, why shouldn't I be paid? How will you handle that? Will you just go, well, you know, that's just part of it, or will you work with HR to hopefully, you know, make a new position for them where they can get extra pay? Because it's, you know, when you look at equity, you got to look at, you know, just if you're looking across the board, you want it to be equal. And if you got other people doing more jobs than normal, are you going to pay them? They don't want just a stipend. What's your answer to that?
So I know, thank you for the question. Okay. So we have what we call a salary schedule and a stipend schedule. And the one thing that I know we have to do is make sure we don't blow the budget. Okay? I have to be mindful of the budget. But back during budget planning, we can plan for those things. And so, for example, last week when you asked me the question about teacher evaluation, I mentioned to you that we had a plan. It was called the Teacher Effectiveness Indices. It's called Teacher Incentive Allotment now. And so when teachers achieve phenomenal results, we pay them for the levels of effectiveness, all the way up to making more than $100,000 a year. And so every teacher and then also staff member have an opportunity to go above and beyond, but get results, And so I want to make sure every employee has that opportunity. And so we can create something like that, but it will be fair. But remember, all the resources with that success triangle, the budget will go to benefit our children. We want to lift them up. So we'll pay teachers for their effectiveness levels based on their evaluation and their outcomes, but we definitely don't want to blow the budget. We have to build it in.
I think you answered my question because I wanted it to be more than teachers, because I'm giving you real scenarios. When you have secretaries that are actually acting as assistant principals or, in running the school, or you have ESL people that should be directors and they're doing extra work. And I think you answered my question that you would engage all staff. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Dr. Coleman.
Thank you again. Sir, please describe a time for us when you worked with a school board to navigate a controversial decision, and what was your approach, and what was the outcome?
So years ago, thank you for the question. Years ago, we had a chief financial officer to come out of the business field and really didn't know how to prepare a school district budget. And so when we were going through an audit, we found out that we were like $65 million in the hole, okay? And so what we had to do, so we were in single-member districts, and so I had to report to a very strong board member who was like, how are you going to make sure that you take care of the people? And so we had to do a reduction RIF. We had a financial exigency. That was the hardest thing, but we had to communicate that to our board, communicate that to our community, communicate that to our school personnel and our families. And so because what happened, we had to increase class sizes. We made 600 cuts at the campus level. Now, mind you, this was a huge school district, so where you have 20,000 teachers, but 600 is still a lot. Now, what we were able to do is recover because we, on the expense side, were able to stop some of our expenses. And so we shifted a lot of things into grants to pay for our expenses, to pay some salaries. We had enough grant money to pay salaries. And what we did, we recovered in about 6 months to where we hired those 600 back. And so that was a hard lesson learned. That's something that we're not going to do because we're going to actually, have a transparent process for budgeting to make sure that, enough is enough. We achieve our needs, but we're mindful of our wants. We're not going to overstaff the central office. Definitely not. What we will do, I'll take a hard look at central office. If you go in my central office right now, it's probably empty. All the people have to go work on the campus. Okay? That's where the rubber hits the road. And so that would be my expectation as well. And so that was a challenging time, but it was a lesson learned.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The next question will come from Ms. Pamela Portis.
Okay, Dr. Wright, last one for me. How would you ensure that Montgomery Public Schools remains adaptable to future educational trends, demographic shifts, and technological advancements while maintaining a consistent focus on equity and student achievement?
Long-range planning. Long-range planning. We've got to prepare for the future. In my document, it says future focused. And so what does that mean? Future-ready principals, future-ready teachers, future-ready technology, getting our kids future-ready. And so we've got to do the research. We've got to really study what's out there, what's coming. AI has just been introduced. And people are using it, but how are they using it? And are they using it to best advantage our kids? Do they have the technical know-how? And so those are things that we have to look at. Also, do we need policies around AI? And so one of the things I just completed, it was more than a year-long process, was doing technology upgrades throughout all of our schools. We're a fast growth district. And so we just made a huge purchase by involving our teachers and community and what should technology look like in our classrooms. And so the teachers and principals and community members were able to look at 5 different vendors, and they decided on one selection because it was easy to use, it was user-friendly, teachers could adapt to it real quickly. And so could the kids. They have their one-to-one devices. And so the kids, once we get all the technology to them, the training comes out. But also, when you look at the test, I took the 7th grade math test. And so I taught math for a moment, but I took the 7th grade math test. It's difficult, and I know math, but what you have to do with the math test, for example, it was fractions. It says, put the fractions in simplest form. So you do that. It was like 5 of them. And then drag them to the number line and place them in order. And I'm like, wow. So there could be anything could trip a kid. They may not know how to do the math and put it in the simplest form. But if they do, maybe they don't know how to use the computer to grab and drag the numbers to place on the number line. It's difficult. And so it's unlike our learning with pencil and paper. So we have to help our teachers and students adapt to the technology associated with our learning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Joseph, we good? Still good on time? Okay, good deal. MPS is committed to transparency and accountability in fiscal management. Can you explain how you would explore strategies to stabilize us in some areas where we probably would need some stabilization? One of them being enrollment, maximizing fund utilization, and sustain our district's financial health, which we are in a good place. All of this to support equitable education opportunities for all of our students in Montgomery.
So thank you for the question. It goes back to long-range planning. So pulling together a facility study committee, a technology study committee, but a budget study committee as well. Those things should be in a line. And so the one thing that I know, and I'll give you the example how you can bleed a budget. If we don't pay attention to the upkeep of buildings, because they're brick and mortar, usually have like a 50-year life cycle. That's one thing. And so the other thing we have to do is have a demographic study. And we need to look 5 years down the road and project, are kids moving in? Are we just, I hate to use the term flatlining, but that's what's coming to me right now. Or are we experiencing enrollment decreases? And so we have to really look at our projections, what's down the road, to start thinking about, well, how are we going to budget in the future when we experience either enrollment increase, are we stable, we're not gaining or losing students, or are we losing students? The thing I know about budgeting and practices like that and forecasting, what we have to do, I don't have all the answers, but when we bring people together, talking to you, talking to our community, bringing in some experts, and thinking about how creative can we get when we start losing funds. The other thing, we have to start seeking out grants. And so I know that's what we do. You know, the thing that kind of impacted us coming out of the pandemic, we lost all that good ESSER funding. We lost all that good ESSER funding. Now, we had to make some cuts, but fortunately, we had enough vacancies to where we didn't have to say, okay, we don't have a role for you anymore. people had bought houses, we want to make sure they stayed in the community. So where there was a vacancy and they were certified to take on that role, we hired them, but we made sure that we trained them to be effective. But also with the transparent approach, we will make sure we have workshops, community workshops on how to look at the numbers, the enrollment, and we will have an enrollment strategy. If we're losing kids to charter schools and private schools and homeschooling, we've got to determine what makes us great. It goes back to, why would I want to send my kids to Montgomery Public Schools? What do they have to offer? We need to bring back the former graduates and let them speak about the quality of education they received here. Those can be our best salespeople, okay? And their families, for good reasons, they kept them here and graduated them here, and I believe that they love it. But the other thing I will say to you is when I do my school visits, I'm always looking, okay? I'm kind of old school about this, but serious about it. I'm looking at the upkeep of the external, outside of the building, okay? Because we have taxpayers. We have some that send their kids to our schools and some that don't. But they need to be proud of the community that exists they need to be proud of the school that exists in the community. The other thing, I walk in, is it clean? If my baby is going to that school, I need to see a shiny floor. I need to see clean cafeterias. I need to see clean classrooms. That's fair, right? We have to put our kids in an environment where they can thrive, but feel good about the environment. That's part of the Safe Schools initiative. And I can go deeper into how we can make sure our kids are safe when they walk in our buildings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. At this time, we'll give you an opportunity for a concluding statement.
I get a chance to ask questions? No?
At this point,
Oh, man. Number one, thank you. I am both humble. Again, as I opened up my statement, I've been around some great leaders who have equipped me with some great leadership skills. And so I will be the lead learner if hired or when hired. And so that's what I do. I set a good example. And so the other thing, I've given you some of my work, okay? And so I know that you wanted to know about the equity work. And the one thing I talked about was establishing a program to where we can have Montgomery Achieves. But also with our early learning, we could have Strong Start Montgomery. Because we're excellent them on the high end, but what about our babies in the elementary school or before they come to school? So Strong Start initiatives to make sure, because they learn the most from 18 months to 3 years old. And so we can't forget about that, but it's the collective impact work. We can do great things together. We can do tremendous, phenomenal things to benefit our kids. I'll be visible. I must be getting tired. I'm tongue-tied. But I'm excited. I'll be visible. I'll be approachable. I'll be a problem solver. That's what I bring to the table. When you hand me something, I'm going to figure it out. If I hadn't seen it before, I'm not going to say, well, I've never done that before. No, I'm going to figure it out. We're going to get it done. And so I have a process to figure problems out. And so I always include people, and I don't make fast decisions, okay? I'm not going to do anything to embarrass you, okay? But we will build a brand, and we're going to protect that brand. And so we'll do research-based practices. I call them the RIBBYs, Research Instructional Best Practices. And so you'll see those things in every classroom. When you walk out of a building and go to another building, you will know you're still in Montgomery Public Schools. And those kids are getting treated like they're our own. And so that's what we'll do. Again, I am Dr. Harold Wright. I am humbled to be here. I made this trip by plane last night. It was a rough one, okay? And so I was praying on my way down. And so fortunately, I got here. I touched good old terra firma. But the other thing, we did drive out here. My wife and I love it. We could see ourselves being partners with you, partners in this community. Um, it's going to be a great transition. I know you have my transition plan. I have to transition where I am because the next person that replaces me, I want them to say, hey, I got some big shoes to fill. And so, again, thank you. I love what I do, and I'm humble. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our interviews.